If you have played as a mage before, I'm sure at some point you have wondered, which is better, Genius Wand or Divine Glaive? In this video, I'll be attempting to answer this question for us. The key draw of both Genius Wand and Divine Glaive are that they provide magic defense reduction and magic penetration respectively. These effects are unique to them since no other tier 3 item in the game can provide these effects. In case you don't already know what these items do, let me briefly remind you about it. Genius Wand has two passives. The first provides a flat 10 points of magic penetration. The second passive reduces enemy magic defense by 3 to 7 for 2 seconds whenever they are hit by magic damage from the holder of Genius Wand. This effect can stack up to 3 times. For example, at level 14 with Genius Wand, if you hit an enemy 3 times with magic damage, you can reduce his magic defense by 7 plus 7 plus 7, which is a total of 21 magic defense reduced. As for Divine Glaive, it also has two passives. The first gives you 35% magic penetration. The second passive gives 0.1% extra magic penetration for each point of the enemy's magic defense. Both passives are based on the enemy's magic defense stats. For example, if an enemy has 100 magic defense, the total percentage penetration Divine Glaive gives is 0.1% multiplied by 100 plus 35%. This percentage will then be multiplied by the enemy's magic defense, which as mentioned is 100, giving us 45 magic penetration when dealing damage to that enemy. The key difference between magic defense reduction and magic penetration is that magic defense reduction is a debuff that is applied directly to an enemy target. On the other hand, magic penetration can be considered a buff that is applied on yourself. Both effects will increase your personal damage to an enemy, but since magic defense reduction is a debuff applied to the target, it can also benefit other teammates who are dealing magic damage to that enemy. In that case, you might be thinking, isn't Genius Wand the superior option? Well, it's not that simple. As we can see from the comparison chart here, the purple line represents Divine Glaive's magic penetration, while the blue, green, yellow, and red lines represent Genius Wand's. Depending on how many stacks of Genius Wand's second passive you can trigger, and how much magic defense that specific enemy has, Divine Glaive is able to be on par with Genius Wand's overall quote-unquote penetration stats. At 30 magic defense with no stacks, 45 magic defense at 1 stack, 60 magic defense at 2 stacks, and 75 magic defense at 3 stacks. Just to note, I'm using the highest amount of magic defense reduction per stack that Genius Wand can get, since the reduction amount scales with your hero's level. Just to give you an idea, most of the heroes at level 15 will have a base of 45 magic defense, including most of the squishies such as Marksman. If they just buy Tough Boots, this increases their total magic defense to 67. Or if they instead bought Athena's Shield, you can expect their magic defense to be 107, where Divine Glaive will be the obvious superior option over Genius Wand, whether you have 3 stacks or not. This is of course only comparing the two items in a vacuum, and not accounting for other factors like penetration stats from emblems, hero passives which reduce magic defense, or even Arcane Boots, which also has magic penetration. Now we've got that out of the way, what you really want to know is probably when and which hero you should be buying either of these items with. Well, let's set up a scenario first. We'll be using Fasa and Gusion as our respective burst and multi-hit magic heroes for comparison. I chose these two heroes in particular as the calculations on these two heroes are simpler to assess. I think it's fair to assume both of them will be using the Mage Emblem. Let's also assume we have a level 60 Mage Emblem with 3 points in Agility and Observation, which is a common point allocation for this emblem. This will give us a base stat of 17 magic power and 19.5 magic penetration. Let's also assume that we do not have any other items equipped to make the comparison simpler and more concise. We'll do 2 comparisons. The first is when they are both at level 7, which represents the early to mid game, and level 15, which represents the late game. So let's start with the early game first, and we begin with Fasa. We will be assuming Fasa is only doing 2 hits of her ultimate on the target, which I believe is a realistic scenario since it's common for Fasa to be bombing enemies far away in the backline with her ultimate, and it's common that she will only be able to land 2 hits on an individual target during a teamfight. So here's the damage chart based on 2 hits of her ultimate. What we can see here is that Genius Wand's and Divine Glaive's damage is about equal when the enemy has close to 40 magic defense. For some context, most heroes at level 7 has roughly 28 base magic defense stats, which means Genius Wand does more damage than Divine Glaive to enemies who have chosen not to buy any magic defense items at all in the early game. But suppose a smart enemy who has watched my defense guide video and therefore spent just 220 gold to buy a single magic resist cloak would then have 46 magic defense instead. At this point, you would do slightly more damage if you bought Divine Glaive instead of Genius Wand with Fasa for this specific scenario. And just so you can see that these aren't just numbers on a sheet, here is a demonstration of exactly what I described in this section. As you can see, Fasa does more damage with Genius Wand than Divine Glaive to an enemy with 28 magic defense. and now Fasa does slightly more damage with Divine Glaive than Genius Wand when the enemy has 46 magic defense. Now let's take a look at Gusion. To simplify the calculations, we assume that he lands all of his skill 2 daggers on the target and also successfully recalls all of them back on the target. Here's what the damage chart looks like for him in this specific scenario. As we can see, this is clearly different from Fasa, as the intersection point which Genius Wand and Divine Glaive do similar damage is roughly 50 magic defense instead of 40 on Fasa. This means that on a level 7 target that has not built any magic defense and only has 28 magic defense, Genius Wand does significantly more damage. Specifically, you would do around 8% more damage with Genius Wand than with Divine Glaive in this scenario. Even when the enemy has built Tough Boots, you would do roughly similar damage with Genius Wand and Divine Glaive. So Genius Wand is the obvious choice in the early game for Gusion. So now the question is, why does Genius Wand work better for Gusion than on Fasa, even though we can classify both of these heroes into the burst class of mages? The key here is that Fasa's damage is mostly front-loaded into 2 hits. Because of this, Fasa is not able to trigger enough of Genius Wand stacks to make it an obvious stronger option, while Gusion on the other hand may be considered as a burst mage as well, but his skill 2 damage is spread out into 20 hits, 10 from throwing out the daggers and 10 more from recalling the daggers, making it a 20 hit burst combo. However, only the first 3 hits do not benefit from Genius Wand's full stack magic damage reduction debuff, while all of the remaining 17 hits do. Fasa in comparison would not have any stacks on the first hit and just 1 stack on her second hit. Now let's look at the late game for both of these heroes. Here is the damage chart for Fasa supposing we are at level 15. We are still assuming the only items we have are either Genius Wand or Divine Glaive for simpler calculations. Here we can still see that Genius Wand and Divine Glaive damage intersects at around 40 magic defense. But the key here is that most heroes at level 15 will already have about 45 magic defense at base stats from level growth. This means that we should at minimum consider 45 magic defense, of which Divine Glaive wins out in damage versus Genius Wand in this scenario. And suppose the enemy has at least built Tough Boots or Athena Shield, we can see that Divine Glaive is the obvious winner here. As for Gusion, here is the damage chart for him in the late game. Since the magic defense reduction for Genius Wand's passive increases with levels, so does the intersecting point of equal damage for Genius Wand and Divine Glaive. Now the breakpoint is increased to around 60 magic defense for the late game instead of 50 magic defense for the early game. In this case, you should not switch out Genius Wand for Divine Glaive unless your targets have at least 60 magic defense. If your targets have built at least Tough Boots or Athena's Shield, Divine Glaive is again the obvious winner here. Now that you have this information, you might be asking, what if I'm not using Fasa or Gusion? Well, the key thing about itemization is understanding your hero. Genius Wand works a lot better with multi-hit attacks. So heroes that have similar multi-hit attacks to Gusion, such as Chang'e and Eve, will be able to abuse Genius Wand's magic defense reduction passive easily. On the other hand, heroes that have single-hit burst damage abilities such as Fasa, Aurora or Veil will find Divine Glaive a more useful option, especially in the late game. And of course, there are mages that are in between, since they do not have as many hits in their attacks, such as Kagura and Vexana. These mages exist in the grey area in between which is better, Divine Glaive or Genius Wand, since they do have more than one big hit in their combos which are able to trigger more stacks of Genius Wand. Personally, what I would do for these types of mages is to play it safe and go for Divine Glaive instead of Genius Wand if I need the magic penetration, since Glaive's penetration is more guaranteed compared to Genius Wand, which relies on making sure all of my skills actually do hit the target to trigger the stacks. Another thing we also have to consider is that certain types of heroes have abilities that can reduce enemies' magic defense, such as Sylvana and Harley. In these cases, Genius Wand is usually a better option overall, since you can stack the flat penetration and defense reduction effects much better than Divine Glaive. Do take note that Divine Glaive's penetration calculation only takes place after magic defense reduction effects have been calculated, so Glaive's passive is less effective when using those heroes and is also why Genius Wand is preferred on them. So just to recap, whether you should buy Genius Wand or Divine Glaive should be dependent on these factors. What is the damage profile of the hero you're using? Is it burst or multi-hit? Does the hero have magic defense reduction abilities such as Sylvana or Harley? And how much magic defense do the enemies have? Make sure you think of these factors when deciding which of these penetration items to build to do the most damage possible. I'm sure many of you may be thinking, so what about if we compare something like Divine Glaive versus something like Holy Crystal? What's the better item to get then? Well, you can find out the answer in this next video here, where I go through how much magic defense does Divine Glaive actually become better than another item. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.